This is a demonstration on ranked choice voting, instant runoff, versus plurality voting, the type of voting system most common in the United States. This example includes 5 candidates: Jane, Sarah, Harry, Dick, and Tom, and is a replication of another video going around. And I've set up the votes exactly as they are in the other video. There are 26 voters. I've already sorted their ballots. And in this situation, if this were ranked choice voting, in the first round, Jane has 8 votes, Sarah has 6 votes, Harry has 5 votes, Dick has 4 votes, and Tom has 3 votes. Now, with ranked choice voting, people who are casting their ballots have an option and are encouraged to not just choose their favorite candidate, but also rank second, third, even fourth, fifth choices, as many candidates as there are. In this example, no one has listed more than their top 3 preferences, but that's their choice. And it should be pointed out, if every single voter had listed their top picks 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then in the end, as we went through the instant runoff, we would be left with a candidate who has gotten a majority of votes. One thing we should point out is that the usual system, the old system, plurality voting, is not a majority voting system unless there were only 2 candidates. So actually, if we think about what would happen under plurality voting, voters would not be listing second, third choice, and so on. They would just be casting votes for one candidate. In this case, the top 2 vote getters, Jane and Sarah, would be compared to see who has more, and anyone who voted for Tom, Dick, or Harry would have their votes at this point eliminated. Their ballots would not matter from this point on. All we would be doing is comparing Jane and Sarah. Jane has 8 votes, Sarah has 6 votes, and so Jane would be declared the winner with an 8-6 victory. That is 8 ballots out of a total of 26 would determine the winner. Less than a third of the voters. That doesn't seem particularly fair, especially if you consider that, well, those other voters might have had something to say. The ones who preferred another candidate might strongly prefer Jane to Sarah or Sarah to Jane, and it would be great if we could ask them what their preference was. If the voters who selected Tom first knew that they were voting for someone who was going to only get 3 votes, they might have decided to cast a vote for someone else. So instant runoff allows us to essentially ask them. Now, I'm not going to go through all the steps. You can look at the other video going around to see the individual steps. I just want to compare the ending in terms of what would happen here with ranked choice voting. Notice, if you look to the end point after going through the rounds of elimination, in this example, you would still end up with Jane versus Sarah as the main vote getters, but elimination along the way would give us, for example, someone who voted for Tom, then Sarah, then Dick, and who did not mention Jane at all. Well, they liked Sarah. Clearly, we can take the fact that they didn't mention Jane as she's at the bottom, or at least one of the people at the bottom, and Sarah gets that vote. Someone who chooses, like these 2 people who voted for Tom, then Harry, then Dick, didn't mention Jane or Sarah, it's as if they said they don't really have a preference between those 2. They're only happy if one of these 3 men wins, and if it's one of the 2 women, Jane and Sarah, they don't have a preference. So they've essentially eliminated their own ballots. They've told us they have nothing more to say. Here's someone who voted for Jane over Sarah, someone who voted Dick, then Tom, then Jane, so their vote goes to Jane. Again, I'm skipping the steps of one elimination at a time, and we know from the other video that it will be Jane versus Sarah in the end. Dick, then Sarah, then Harry goes to Sarah. Here's someone who just like Dick, followed by Tom, and so Their vote has nothing to say about the finalists. Harry, then Dick, then Tom. Nothing to say about the two candidates, Jane and Sarah, who remain. Harry, Dick, and Sarah will go to Sarah. Harry, Sarah, Jane prefers Sarah to Jane. Harry, Dick, then Jane. No mention of Sarah. This vote goes to Jane. And Harry, Dick, then Jane goes to Jane. So in the end, as you may well know, the final count among anyone who had something to say about Jane and or Sarah, Jane still wins. She wins with 14 total votes versus 10 votes for Sarah. And so compare that to 8 versus 6 under the plurality system, where 12 ballots would have been thrown out and not had a say in the final counting. And in this case, we only have 4 voters whose ballots weren't counted in the final matchup. And note again, that's by their choice. They didn't have anything to say about a potential matchup between Jane and Sarah.